struggling to render these frames. I mean, hopefully that'll help it get a little bit better. Everything closed out. Now we can close this out. All right, we are connected. Ooh. It's been an exciting week, and next week is only going to get more exciting. It's felt like time has started to feel very perpetual for me this week. Like it's everything just kind of bleeds, all the days just kind of bleed together. Like it's always like I'm taking snippets of sleep here and there, like snaps, like and it's like it's not, I don't think it's unhealthy because I feel well rested or well rested enough, but like I've been sleeping in smaller intervals of time spread out throughout the day, and that was just because like I have a couple like obligations that kind of messed up my sleep schedule. So I'm trying to re-regulate that. But yeah, so it's just kind of, it's felt kind of nonstop, which is I think like a good thing, because it's nonstop in a different way. Because I've now been campaigning for almost a year. The elections last year were on November 8th, and so I started campaigning basically on, it wasn't actually, it was supposed to be the 9th. It ended up being like the 10th really, that like I really started clicking into stuff. And then it was within a week though, I was like calling people. I was calling people when the presidential race still hadn't been called yet. And like talking to people about like, hey, so 2022, so yeah, but a lot has been happening, and I want to give some updates and talk about what's happened this week, what's happening next week, and then the actual topic of the day, what we're talking about in class with Sass, is just like supporting veterans. So I had a couple posts earlier this week about it, and I had a couple good exchanges, and it just made me think about it more and more. And so, I think it's an important topic. If I wish I had kind of thought about it a little bit sooner. I would have loved to bring on a guest, a veteran to kind of bounce ideas off of. But I also wanted to have this bit about the update, about this update too. So, still waiting for some viewers. But I'd still love to just get into it. So first and foremost, I'm Twitter verified now. That was a big deal. What happened first was my Ballotpedia page came up. Well, what happened first was there was an election this week. All right, where does it all start? Yes, there was an election this week. There was where I live here in Austin. All we had were propositions, so there were 8 state level state constitutional amendments that were on the ballot. I voted yes on 6 of them and no on 2 of them, and last week I went through them and went over like why. And the 2 that I voted no on, at least one of those 2, I think I'd said I was like, I'm voting no, but I can see why people would vote yes. And the other one, I can't remember how I felt, if I was like still closer to neutral on. But then there were also 2 propositions at the city level in Austin, Prop A and Prop B. I voted against Prop A, which basically was going to take like money away from the fire department and like other emergency personnel and give it to the police in ways that like didn't really make sense. Like there were 1 or 2 parts of it that I was like, okay, I could get behind that, but then the rest of the provisions were like awful. And so the Austin electorate voted no on Proposition A, 69% no, so that was nice. And then voted yes on Prop B, which was like over 70% voted yes on Prop B, which really was just it was a deal that the city was making with Oracle, or there was a little plot of land next to Oracle that they wanted, and so in exchange they're effectively paying a really, really, really high price for it in order to pay for a bunch of other local projects, expanding our parks and doing things. So generally, I think it went well. But, we saw other elections all across the country. People were talking about the governor's race in Virginia and stuff. And it's so funny, we're all in our own echo chambers. And the messaging I kept seeing from people, which I agree with, which is like, Democrats lost because Democrats didn't do anything in the last 10 months, 9.5 months. And I can attest to that personally. I tweeted, I received more aid in the last 9 months of the Trump administration than in the first 9 months of the Biden administration. And I'm not alone in that. A lot of Americans were in that, had that same experience. And so, I just think that that's important to recognize. I get that it's more than just the president. There's a lot more to it than that. And there are a lot of other people involved, and my own governor who has refused billions of dollars in federal aid for unemployment, and then we never saw an increase in employment. We only saw an increase in poverty. Right, but it's that's the core messaging that if Democrats want to win, then they have to actually help people, which is not actually new, but I think just more and more people are waking up to it. But yeah, I'm running for the people. That's not changed. I'm in it for the people. But yeah, so an election happened, and then I got Twitter verified, or my Ballotpedia page finally went up. And then because of that, I was able to get Twitter verified. And then Greg, and I'm going to pronounce it wrong. I've been getting it wrong every time. Greg Casar, Casar. He is a local city council member. He had an exploratory committee looking into running in Texas 35, the district with no incumbent that I'm running in. And then he announced this week that he is going to run. He's already raised tens of thousands of dollars. He has all of the endorsements from, the Mayor Steve Adler and Jose Garza and Wendy Davis and all sorts of big name Democrats in Texas. So that's a big deal. I voted for Greg last year in November 2020. This is for his third term, and he's actually a really good city council member. I'm not gonna hate on him. I'm not gonna succumb to that ridiculous electoral stuff. I like him. I think he's a great city council member. I think he's got the people of Austin in mind, and he's very vehement on that, and he stands with the people. And I think he's fought he's been really fighting the good fight. That almost kind of makes me want him to stay on the city council, though. I'd rather have him here because he just is so in tune with this town and the people here, and the local issues. This is the thing that I've talked about before when people are well, why Congress? Why not a different political seat? And there are a variety of reasons why I picked U.S. House, but one of them was just that I am very passionate about national issues, and I didn't feel that it was appropriate for me to run at a city level or a state level. I just felt that's not where I didn't feel like I had earned that kind of connection yet in that way, because I recognize that U.S. Congress is legislating on stuff that affects everybody across the whole country, and that it's a fundamentally different seat, and that the approach is fundamentally different as well. I understand and know a lot about local issues more than most, for sure. People talk to me about it all the time. People always bring up, particularly state level issues, and I always have to be well, there's a limit to what I can do, but here's what I'm thinking about and my stance. So yeah, I'd love to have him stick around in city council fighting for the people. politicians tend to become less effective as they move up, and particularly at the federal level. That's where they really lose their effectiveness because it's just such a swamp. Which is something I've talked about many times before about the government accountability and some of the 21st century approaches I want to take to get around the gridlock in Congress. And so, like that's huge for me. And, who knows what his messaging will be? Who knows what he'll come up with? But his big statement was about jobs was a thing he said, and that was just an immediate red flag for me. I was talking to Faye Q of Yang Gang Roundtable Live, and because I'm gonna get to this in a sec. We're gonna do a little UBI thing next week, and we were thinking about Greg is running now. Is he a UBI candidate? I was like, let's look into it. And I saw it said more jobs or whatever. And it was immediate red flag because a UBI advocate is not a fan of jobs. We are a fan of freedom. We are fans of people being able to decide for themselves what they want to do with their time and in their lives, particularly in the 21st century when we do have this abundance. And we believe that that all people deserve to have their basic needs secure and to live a decent life. And when you recognize that half the country does not work for a wage, then when you make jobs the focus or working class the focus, then you are necessarily leaving out half the country, which I refuse to do. And so that's a red flag to me. And I don't know where his stance is on voting. For sure, as a congressional candidate, if you want to get an endorsement from me, you have to show some competency and care about basic income, unconditional basic income, and voting methods. That is the baseline before I'll even consider an endorsement. So may the best candidate win, but so we'll see what happens with Greg. I will say that makes this a really tough race for me, for sure. He has a lot more name recognition. I was unable to get the name recognition that I wanted, and the level of fundraising that I wanted by this time, which it's on me. But enough about Greg. More updates about this campaign. So this upcoming week, there's a lot happening. So on Sunday, so in 2 days, at noon Central Time, and remember, clocks fall back the night before. So 2 a.m. Sunday morning, so Saturday night, the clocks fall back an hour, so we gain an hour. So pay attention to your clocks and your time. But at noon, I am going on a panel with Tom from Nerds for Humanity. And he is hosting, because he also runs the site ofthepeople.us. Ofthepeople.us. Close enough. I'm just looking at the transcription. Anyway, but top 5 most approved candidates of all time. And I was number 3. And so all 5 of us are going to be on this panel on Sunday, and I'm super excited. And we're going to talk about all sorts of cool different things, probably UBI and the environment and healthcare and voting, which is another cool thing that's happening. The Equal Vote Coalition is now starting to plan a sort of candidate convention where we just bring together candidates from all over the country to talk about voting method reform and other important aspects of voting. As well as getting the community involved, where people get to vote on different voting methods by using different voting methods. And so we're just in the beginning phases of that, but so we definitely want to talk about that on Sunday and promote that. We've got probably a good half dozen candidates already interested, and I want to get more. I'm mostly just promoting it. I'm not running it. I want to try to keep it pretty neutral, so I'm leaving that up to the Equal Vote Coalition to run it and make executive decisions. for sure, but I kind of hatched it, but it sounds like they've done something like this before too. Like, that's an exciting thing. No hard dates or details on that yet, but so like that's a thing to get hype about. And then so that's Sunday, and then on Monday, this last Monday I was on Case Study QB's Political Junkies live stream as a little bit of a cameo, and I am likely going to join, and I'm going to be on there this next Monday as well. He asked me to during this last live stream, so I said yes, and so I'm going to be on that. I don't think there's anything specific. It's mostly just going to be like updates and stuff. So that's happening, and then on Tuesday, I have 2 very special meetings I'm a little bit secretive about right now. One of them is about voting, and one of them is about housing, actually. More specifically, like what we can do at the federal level to better address housing by learning from what has worked elsewhere in the country. But also they probably want to talk about like misinformation a little bit. They might want to talk about voting, but it's somebody with a decently high profile name. So he's coming to Austin, and we're gonna meet. So that's gonna be cool. So, but I don't want to spill the beans too much on that because I don't know exactly what's gonna come out of that. But so those are really exciting. And then on Wednesday, I'm not going to be on anything on Wednesday necessarily. I know that North Carolina star voting and approval voting, that chapter might be having a meeting, but I show up to that just to help out. But Thursday, I'm going to be on Mute the Media and the Trickle Up. At the same time, they'll be simultaneously streaming, but so they've invited me back on, and they want to hear specifically about my platform and like voting methods. So like that's going to be super exciting. So that is I'll be posting a graphic later today, this evening, with details of like the dates and times of all of these. And so that's like a super cool and exciting thing that's happening. And I've been on their streams before, but more casually. So this is going to be like a super cool thing to be like a little bit more formal. And I've been on Nerds for Humanity as well. So it's like I'm getting some of these repeats in. And then on Friday, again, another repeat. I'm going on the Yang Gang Roundtable live cast with Aku and Annette the Peacemaker and David Anderson Jr., who is down in San Antonio and also running in Texas 35. He has the Freedom Dividend on his platform, which is super exciting. I just want to say on record, I did mention to Faye about Claudia Zapata as well, but she didn't have anything about unconditional basic income on her site, and that was kind of like the really important thing to Faye, and so it's their stream, and so they decided they didn't want to invite on Claudia just because she's not a UBI candidate, and so more power to them. But so yeah, I'm super excited to talk with David and Faye and Annette the Peacemaker and maybe some others. Who knows? Maybe Shale or show up or something. But somebody else. Yeah, there's some other people who might show up. But to talk about basic income, because it's been a while. I've been talking about voting so much lately, because voting has just kind of taken over my life. It's been very exciting. I'm working on, some of y'all might have noticed, I'm working on a new voting method that the Equal Vote Coalition might be switching to for their conversation, which is super cool. But that's part of Tuesday potentially. But that may turn around quickly. That may take a while to turn around. But I'll definitely, if that's something you're interested in, I'm gonna at least post minor updates or links to where you can find out more. As that happens, but you can always just ask me for more details if you want. So that's Friday, and then that's happening. Let's see. So that's at 4 p.m. Central on next Friday, and then that's like an hour and a half, maybe a little more, and that will lead right into my Friday night live stream in class with Sass at 6 p.m. So what am I going to talk about next week? I haven't figured it out yet. I haven't decided. But if you've got ideas, let me know. I've kind of found some other kind of more niche topics I kind of want to like mention or go over. But who knows? Maybe I'll find a guest. I'm definitely going to be talking to a lot of people this next week. So who knows? Maybe I'll do something else. I could definitely see myself having on a guest and doing some kind of cool special thing next week. But we'll get there when we get there. So, and I really want to try to do a round of getting some volunteers and like actually scheduling some phone banking, and doing some like door knocking and like getting more people door knocking and stuff. So for sure want to get that going. So I'll be really trying to get the details laid out on that this weekend, and then putting out the call. I'll probably talk about that in Political Junkies. All right, cool. And we finally have a viewer. I've been talking at the screen for 20 minutes. Hello, nice to have you. Go ahead, say hello in the chat. But now I get to the actual topic of the day. I've just been giving campaign updates. But the topic of the day is supporting veterans. So I've made a couple posts about that this week. And one of the things, this is not my idea, but I think it's really cool, is the concept of, before I get to that, actually, veterans continue to get shafted by politicians over and over and over again. And many veterans are just tired of it and just don't take politicians at their word anymore. And I think that's reasonable. I think that's fair. I think it definitely needs to be an actions speak louder than words kind of thing. And I don't really have like anything to say or show that like that like actually demonstrates that like I have done XYZ for veterans that's like what I would say is actually like significant and above and beyond. Like, I've bought veterans meals before and helped out homeless veterans and stuff before, but anything that's that's like actually makes a difference. Like I haven't been in politics. I haven't had a huge opportunity to, but like, I ask that you trust me, and hopefully you believe in some of the creative ideas that I have around it. But I totally get that you want to see that many veterans just want to see something happen before they are ready to say yes to any politician. And I think that's fair. I do. I think it's totally reasonable, because the history of the way that politicians in the U.S. have been treating veterans it speaks for itself. But so one of the ideas that I stole from Andrew Yang is reverse boot camp. So when people join the military, they go through boot camp in preparation to become soldiers. And one of the parts of boot camp is just acclimating to the military life, like a regimented lifestyle. Somebody else writes your schedule for you. You do everything on time, set up, clean, perfect, standard. As well as like the way that you respond to different stimuli is different. If you hear, like there's a certain level of self-defense, or, particularly once you start getting into battle and you start, you lose friends, or, you hear the explosions or the gunfire, and like that makes a difference. That matters. And going from a war zone back to civilian life can be quite jarring. And we don't really have any real programs that help with that transition. And that's really, that transition is really important. And so what I want to have, what I want to develop is a reverse boot camp. So the idea is to help soldiers transition back to civilian life, where maybe loud stimuli doesn't, certain stimuli doesn't trigger them in a certain way anymore, or being able to write their own schedule and manage things. Like a lot of it is psychological. Like that is the big piece of it. I think a reverse boot camp is going to be very focused on the psychological aspect of it. And the goal should be, once it's tested and trialed and we show that it works, eventually we would want to make it mandatory for all soldiers. I do understand that sometimes there are like emergency circumstances where soldiers need to get back home to their family for some reason in a particularly timely manner. And I think that this can be implemented in a variety of different ways that allow for flexibility of a combination of being at home as well as like enrolled in the reverse boot camp, so it can be decentralized. But yeah, helping soldiers to reacclimate to civilian life is, I think, incredibly vital. Learn how to write your own schedules and everything, and so many other aspects that like I want to talk to a veteran about. But like I think that's one thing that could be really helpful for a lot of veterans, because it can be tough. It's tougher for some than others, but I want it to be there. And then the goal would also to have it be optional for any current veterans. Anybody who any current veteran who is struggling, who might be interested in being involved in that program, should be able to participate for free. And we need to create flexible options for that to happen. And that doesn't happen overnight. There's there's all sorts of infrastructure that needs to be built to make that happen. It takes time to build something like that. But with the amount of money we pour in, that can come straight out of the defense budget for sure. And the Department of Defense has plenty of money to spare. Another thing I came across recently was that the U.S. military uses more oil than any other entity in the world. It's not a nation state. And we fight so many wars over oil. It's like it is certainly this self-fulfilling prophecy of sorts. If we didn't fight the wars, we wouldn't need the oil. And so, it's almost a dead giveaway that it's about profits for military contractors and oil barons. So that's just a thing I came across that just makes me mad and frustrated. One of the things I posted was, the end of the war is always fought at home. And if we leave a single veteran unsupported, then we have definitively lost the war, whatever war they were involved in. And so, when it comes to supporting veterans, right? So there are very simple things like legalizing marijuana, decriminalizing and legalizing marijuana and hallucinogens, like particularly psilocybin, mushrooms. That would go a long way for a lot of veterans. It doesn't work for everybody, but that is proven, clinically proven, to be a huge help for PTSD and for a lot of veterans. But there are more comprehensive and complex things. So, for example, Veterans Affairs offices or departments. Some operate better than others. A lot of them, from what I understand, this is all secondhand. A lot of them are subpar, but not all of them. And to me, what that says is it can work, but what is missing is a cross-pollination of information. And I think that this ties in the theme of having a 21st century candidate in office who thinks about stuff in this kind of way of well, this is an information problem and we live in the information age, which means it's a solvable problem. So instituting a program where we go around and we find some of the VAs that operate the best and find out what is working there and bring that information to other VAs. And that's just the information part. We can cross-pollinate the workers as well. We can sponsor, we can send a manager or a couple employees over to another VA. We can pay for, their hospital stay for a week or whatever, and they can just work there for a week and just see how things operate differently, and they can bring some of that institutional knowledge back to their own VA office. And we can create better, more comprehensive guides and guidelines for VAs across the country. And this is certainly this does not happen overnight, right? This is not a simple just change the law. This is a more comprehensive, brass tacks, get down and dirty. How do we? What are the little things? What are the details? What are the specifics? How do we work through this? So that's important. Veteran suicides, it's still, I know the number has come down from 22. I don't know what it is now. I know last year it was 19. I hope it's down to 18, 17, 16, 15, but it needs to be 0 veterans a day committing suicide. I do know that one thing that has worked, and this is purely mitigation. This is not address the root cause. But sending soldiers home on vacation or temporarily or over the weekend or whatever it may be, that they get and is saying, we're not going to send your gun with you. The military is going to hang onto your gun when you go home, and then when you're back, you're good to have it. And that is proven to be a really good mitigation technique. And again, that doesn't apply in all cases. But accessibility of firearms does make a big difference when it comes to suicide, which I believe I've talked about before. The rate of, I don't want to say the rate of success, because suicide with a gun is much more deadly than suicide with other methods. And if you, by the way, let me pause and say, if you are feeling suicidal, you can always call the suicide hotline. You can Google it, or I'll get it on screen right now. Come on. 800-273-8255. So 800-273-8255. Yeah, so just want to put that out there. But yeah, so that's, again, it's a mitigation technique. It doesn't solve the root problem, which is that we send people off to wars that don't need to be fought. And that very much comes from the politicians. That blame is on politicians, it's on military contractors, it's on all the people who profit on war. Your oil executives and so many others across the country and across the world. But it's all right, cool. So I can just say mental health, but what does that actually mean? It means that we need to make the education to become a mental health professional free, and potentially even create economic incentives for more people to go into that space. And we also need to improve training, and we need to not require people to go through the BS Gen Ed, this BS Gen Ed nonsense that we have in colleges. We can have direct training programs for that kind of stuff. There's no reason we can't do that. And we need more variety. We need demographic variety. We need veterans trained in that. One thing that we do know is very important when it comes to therapy is that shared experience makes a big difference, and that there are many different types of therapy. It's not just talking it out. There's music therapy. There's all sorts of different types of physical or body therapy, exercise types of therapy. There are I'm blanking on some of them, but there are many different types of therapy, and there needs to be we need that recognition, and we need to create We need to get enough people there because the demand exists, and then we need to pay for it, which just comes down to prioritization. There's no reason this can't come out of the defense budget. But like again, like the cost of this stuff is so much lower than the costs of the consequences of not having it. This stuff pays for itself 10 times over, just like basic income does in its own way. Like it really is just prioritization. That's really what it comes down to. So yeah, we can get that. We can make that happen. Universal healthcare, I'm huge about, but you specifically want VAs to be able to operate well, because many veterans don't feel comfortable, don't feel they're going to get the treatment that they need at typical hospitals. VAs do specialize in have additional experience in some of the ills that veterans tend to deal with. And again, that kind of goes along the same storyline as the therapy thing, that like the relevant experience is important and it's necessary. And so like I think it's okay to accept that. And again, it's prioritization. Like that funding, the money exists. It's just about choosing to prioritize it, which we absolutely can. There's plenty of money to make that happen. And I think the reason that it's so weird because it is so bipartisan, but it doesn't happen. Like you even hear the politicians on Capitol Hill talking about it, and it still doesn't happen. And I want to get veterans on the Hill. At the end of the day, like, yeah, a lot of politicians are just tied to their moneyed interests, but like the anecdotal personal testimony makes a big difference. And to get veterans on Capitol Hill to share their story on the House floor, on the Senate floor, I think could make at least some difference. But also this is where like my government accountability platform comes in, of like what are politicians saying, what are they doing, how do people feel about it, what are they voting on, how do those numbers work out, and how to leverage all of that information to get other politicians to do the right thing in line with what the people want. But again, like this is the part where veterans keep getting shafted by politicians. This is the cycle of broken promises. And so like I don't delude myself. Like I'm going to be a freshman member of Congress. I'm not sleeping in bed with Nancy Pelosi or Chuck Schumer or whoever. Like I'm not going to get the cool committee seats. I'm not going to have a lot of power. I'm not going to be able to introduce stuff to the floor. I'm going to, like I said, I'm going to try to leverage the government accountability platform as a form of power in Congress to actually get some things done. But like, I'm not going to bullshit you. I'm not going to lie to veterans and say like, I promise I will make this thing happen for you. Like I can't promise that. I just can't. Like it's the dynamics of the politics. I'll be damned if I don't try as hard as I freaking can. But like it's like I'm not going to try to like lie my way into your soul. Like enough politicians already do that, and I get it. I do. And so like really it's like where I'm at is like I want to just show you. I just want to demonstrate that I am going to do something. I'm going to sneak something into some omnibus bill that increases funding or changes some logistical thing or cuts some red tape. Makes veterans disability easier to get. Veterans disability stacks with the unconditional basic income. It stacks with the freedom dividend, by the way. So if you have veterans disability, I view that as earned income, and so I don't want to touch that with the freedom dividend. So you can keep your veterans disability and get your $1,000 a month, your $2,000 a month on top of that, just for being an American who is invested in this country. So like that's an important thing I want to note. And you get to keep your housing assistance too, and any Medicare or Medicaid, and any state level benefits, and your Social Security. But yeah, the I do think unconditional basic income for sure aligns with wanting to help out veterans. I mean, just having that little bit of extra money. But we also see things like most homeless folks are veterans, or it's like I don't want to say most, but like a really high percentage, like in a disproportionately high percentage of homeless folks are veterans. And like I think an important puzzle there is the reverse boot camp of like how do you reacclimate to civilian life. I know that there are programs, they're not great, but they are designed to help connect veterans with jobs in the right area. Again, as I mentioned earlier, I'm not huge on jobs. I'm huge on people being able to decide what they want to do with their time, and leveraging the abundance that we have to guarantee everybody's right to life through an unconditional basic income, and universal health care and stuff. But I think we should just house everybody. It's a housing first approach. When it comes to solving homelessness, I've talked about this before. The two biggest things that the federal government can do are an unconditional basic income and universal health care. Those are the two biggest things at the federal level that give municipalities a fighting chance of addressing homelessness. Because there's a lot of stuff that needs to happen at the local level too. And there are other things that the federal government can do too about creating better information systems and connecting organizations together, and the Freedom Administration should hopefully be able to help with that, because their first task is going to be an IT focused task of information management and setting up the Freedom Dividend for 250 million Americans. But then they're kind of the second part, their second task is to connect with both private and public organizations and governments, local municipalities, to get the Freedom Dividend to homeless folks, and really just folks who don't have a residence or a permanent residence. And so, I think that we can leverage that in terms of a new administration, but there's plenty of existing administrations that can be improved. And sometimes it's just digging down in the details and just seeing what's there and what we can do. But yeah, I feel like I'm rambling. I mean, obviously I've been rambling for the last 43 minutes almost. We certainly let our veterans down. And I get that veterans aren't too fond of political bullshittery, and they want to see action, not words, and I get that, and I think that that's fair. And so, if you're not swooned by my words, I understand. And I want to show you, hopefully, in my first term, I want to demonstrate that I really do mean that. Like, I want to do something different. I want to get veterans on the Hill. I want to implement some creative programs to better help connect veterans with the right services, but improve those services by connecting them to getting the information to the right people in the right places. So yeah, that's where I'm at. I'm gonna wrap it up. There's no comments. There have been very few viewers today. So yeah, that's gonna be all. But thank you if you have watched this or come back around or whatever. But other than that, I'm excited. Hopefully stop by on those live streams next week, and look out for my posts saying or showing what they are, when they are, and all those organizations should be easy to find, and I'll likely tweet out links to them as they come up. But look out, because things are gonna get going. Things are getting going here with this